Talk shoes.
Recorded live.
We are live. Hello and welcome to the Castle Dracula podcast, where we talk about horror movies, vampire movies, and all-around awesomeness. Online at castledraculapodcast.com. Today we're taking on the 2007 anthology horror movie Trick or Treat, directed by Michael Dougherty and starring Anna Paquin, Brian Cox, and a veritable love boat of others spread across 4 storylines. And bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of Alex Van Helsing, Voice of the Undead, currently out from HarperCollins, so look for it at Amazon or your local store. Send me a note when you do. With me are Drew Edwards, the creator of the long-running horror webcomic Halloween Man, which you can find at halloweenman.com. Say hello.
Hey.
Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and writer of comics like Psychom from Tokyopop and Clockworks from Humanoid. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
And token female, Julia Guzman.
Bonsoir.
Okay, I will spare people a blow-by-blow synopsis because I haven't tried to write those things for at least a month. But here's the gist of Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat gives us 4 interweaving stories on one Halloween night. In The Principal, go-to creepy actor Dylan Baker plays a murderous school principal with a family secret. Then in School Bus Massacre Revisited, 5 kids lure a slightly developmentally delayed girl to a rock quarry, intending to scare her with the story of the death of a bunch of special kids on a school bus, only to have the tables turned. In Surprise Party, Anna Paquin plays the victim of a vampire who turns out to be a main character from another sequence, while Anna and her friends have secrets of their own. And finally, Meet Sam brings the movie full circle with the appearance of a ghostly trick-or-treater character who has a good reason to harass a grumpy old man. What connects every story are the theme of the violation of Halloween traditions like not blowing out jack-o'-lanterns and always giving out good treats. But what makes it special is the loopy way the movie folds in on itself, with different characters turning up in one another's storyline and leaving some confusion on my part as to when certain events occur. So, happy Halloween, everyone. Hello.
Happy almost Halloween.
Yes. This is like really the beginning of our October, our build up to Halloween, and we're doing this. We're going to do Charlie Brown. We're going to do the other movie called Trick or Treat. But I'm really excited to kick off Halloween with a movie called Trick or Treat, especially one like this. So I'm very excited to discuss this movie with you guys, and I've been waiting for this. First impression.
It's a dark and stormy night here in Dallas area, so it's perfect for this.
It really is. The thunder is coming down.
What?
You're so lucky. It is still hot as sin here.
Yes.
Yeah, but there's a big old cold front coming through tonight, so it'll be nice tomorrow.
Yeah, I was looking out. I saw lightning building up, and one of the puppies has now run into my office and is cowering underneath the chair. So. And
the other one's looking at me, panting like, "This is horrible."
All right. First impressions, and Julia, I'm saving you because I know you have some definite impressions of this movie. Drew, first impressions, Trick or Treat.
Well, this is the second time I've seen this movie. I think I liked it a lot more this time around. I did enjoy it the first time around. It's a good flick. It's almost, if there wasn't certain aspects of it, it almost would make like a good kiddie horror film because it has like this very odd. And it reminds me a lot of the old EC comics in this way, even though it's so twisted in a way. It has this odd innocence about it, which I find very appealing. And it's the art direction, and we were talking about this before we even got started, when we were all just sort of chit-chatting on the phone. The art direction on this is superb. The creature effects, for the most part, are very, very well executed. And it's got a really good cast. For a low-budget horror film, it's got a great cast. And it's just a fun, seasonal Like this is one of those ones that I think is probably going to become a cult film, and pretty much every October you're going to see people digging this movie.
I agree with that. I agree. Tony, your first impressions, and actually I think you had a special experience watching this movie.
Oh yeah, I actually agree with Drew. Like the first time I saw it was at one of the Button-Umathons, and I thought it was good, but it didn't I thought it was really good and really solid.
And Button-Umathon, just to bring everybody up to speed, is literally a 24-hour movie festival in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually in conjunction with Harry Knowles' birthday.
Yeah.
And so it's Harry Knowles in conjunction with all the crew at the Draft House, Tim League, and everybody else kind of converging into like a geek Christmas.
And crazy things happen at this place. We saw. I used to go before I left the Austin area, but we saw all the Lord of the Rings movies, all of them before they came out.
Vin Diesel,
Mel Gibson showed up to show Passion of the Christ.
Like Quentin Tarantino shows up.
Yeah, what did Vin Diesel show up?
Rodriguez shows up.
Vin Diesel showed Pitch Black.
That's right.
Before it was even a thing, when everybody was like, "Holy cow, where'd this movie come from?"
That's exactly right.
Or
I remember that.
Even on anybody's mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, the director was there, and I can't remember if Bryan Singer was there as well. I seem to remember it maybe being a little longer because of the cut. And also, by the way, this movie almost kind of didn't. I really don't understand Legendary Pictures or whoever was or Warner Brothers or whoever was in charge, because it was supposed to come out that Christmas, and this was in December. I mean, it was supposed to come out that Halloween. It didn't come out that Halloween. It barely came out the next Halloween, and almost was a direct-to-video kind of thing.
It was.
I know it came out, but it was so buried, and it came out. I think when it did come out, it came out opposite of like one of the Saw movies or something.
No, it's worse than that. This movie actually, the studio was intending to release it theatrically. It had really major names behind it. Bryan. Who is it? It is Bryan Singer as the producer, and then Warner Brothers at the last minute decided, no, after all, we're not going to release it theatrically. It's going to go direct to DVD, which is crazy because it has a very high production value.
I may have gotten limited theatrical, but maybe that was an option. And that's
it could be.
Really fair.
I mean, you saw it on big screen, but that's at a festival.
It's a festival, so I don't think it ever got a wide release.
Which is ridiculous.
No, it is
ridiculous.
It's astonishing when you consider the
better
crap.
Horror movies. I mean, there's so much horror crap.
Yeah.
The fact that these guys could not get their actually really well done anthology movie out is a travesty to horror, because I mean there's just so much crud.
Well, we should actually talk about anthologies and whether maybe that's the curse of anthologies.
I mean, in this, there's sketches in the, they gave out a copy of the really, really good art book. I mean, I highly recommend this art book. It is just beautiful. Postcards and comic books in it, and things that are sealed that I haven't even opened yet.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know if I want to.
It's a great looking DVD. People get it. So, all right.
But there's stuff from '96, like the original comic with little kid Sam.
That's right. That character Sam, who is the trick-or-treater icon. This movie has everything that you would want, including an iconic supernatural character. I mean, this movie is aware of horror movies going at least back to the 60s and forward. But all humans cannot be happy with the same art. So, Julia, tell me your first impressions of the masterpiece of Trick or Treat.
Let me say what I liked first, which is I actually like it when films do that, where they cross the stories all cross, and I always get a big kick out of that. I love it in the Quentin Tarantino stuff. I love it in Guy Ritchie stuff. I like it, just any of those movies where you've got all these different stories and that you figure out that that one ties together. That's that same guy from the other story. I love that. I thought there was some really neat imagery. I thought the art was beautiful, the comic book art and all that. That was really interesting. But I am not a fan of slasher movies. I don't like anything that involves people getting cut up and blood spurting everywhere and horrific murders, and so it's always going to be like against I'm always going to be kind of the chances of me liking it are not ever going to be good. So
but this is not. I don't know if this is the time in the podcast discussion, but this is not a slasher movie. I don't know.
There are large knives getting slashed across people and blood spurting everywhere. That to me defines a slasher movie.
No, but that I don't know what that defines. I think that defines a movie where there might be a guy with a knife. But a slasher movie is a movie where there's a slasher movie is a movie where a group of people are stalked by a guy with a weapon, and usually about the middle of the way through they discover the secret of the guy with the weapon, and then there's a final girl. I mean, there's a whole...
It is a gory movie. I mean,
it's a gory movie.
Yeah,
it's a violent movie, yes. But a slasher movie has... I could probably... I mean, Tony might disagree with me, but I think I probably watch more slasher-type horror films than probably anybody else involved with this
I would
podcast.
say you probably have beat me, but
I think it's part slasher movie and part something else, because for sure the weird supernatural guy is like Jason or Michael Myers or any of those other guys, because the one with the that you were talking about, that's the sort of scarecrow guy.
Sam.
Huh?
Really,
yeah, okay.
Really only, like, even if you're going to get into the Friday the 13th, really only the first several, like maybe the first 2 or 3 Friday the 13th or what I would call true quote-unquote slasher movie, and then they just sort of started to veer into being like general monster movie territory. Anyway, this is a whole other podcast.
And by the way, when I talk about slasher movies, the way I define them, and that's sort of, I agree, that's probably a little bit strict, but that whole scenario of having, the slasher, and then there's, in the middle of it, you reveal the mystery, and then there's the final girl and all that stuff. All of that, the book that I enjoyed the most was called Women. It was, what was it? Men, Women, and Chainsaws?
I have that book.
Oh, it's an outstanding book. Men, Women, and Chainsaws. Here it is. Carol J. Clover. Men, Women, and Chainsaws: Gender in the Modern Horror Film, which I really recommend for your postmodern.
I don't know. I think it's a distinction without a difference. So I'm going to continue my.
Well, I just reject everything
you say. Mind slasher film.
Okay, all right. So suffice it to say, you don't like seeing.
To me, there's no voyeurism in this. Therefore, it is not a slasher movie.
There is voyeurism though, because the boy starts out watching the girls taking off their clothes. There is.
You're right. Okay, well then she might
plus there's the guy watching porn, and then there's the people having the sex that don't know each other in the middle of the party. I mean, there's all kinds of, like, if you have sex, you'll die. And by the way, I kind of went through this and thought that at first I was thinking that maybe it was kind of a, that movie Seven, like the 7 Deadly Sins, how every sin is punished. I was kind of trying to go through it and see if it fit. And it fits loosely. There's not 7, though. I think there's only 6 crime or stories, basically crimes.
There are crimes against Halloween, is what they are.
but they kind of fit loosely. But I thought it was kind of neat that they each had a moral. So I kind of went through each story and wrote down what I thought the moral was, or the lesson.
So your first impression is what exactly? That
it has some good things, but I really hated watching it. and when there was a possibility that we weren't going to get to record this podcast, I was like, we are recording this podcast because I had to watch that movie, and there's going to be some payoff, darn it. Because I really didn't like watching it. Very uncomfortable.
All right, great. Okay, well, we'll keep coming back to you for a dose of sanity. And I loved this movie. Now, here's the funny. Let me explain. I love classic horror movies, and yet ever since I had kids, I'm also well known for walking out of anything where kids get killed. I'm all icky sheepish about that crap. And yet, this movie did not trigger any of that at all. All kinds of things happened to all kinds of characters, and yet I loved this movie. I thought it was sweet.
If I had to guess, I would think it's because it's much more. It's the EC comics-ness of it.
Yes.
Like, because as kids we watch terrible things happen to kids.
Yeah.
But not with the same.
Right. I mean,
as a Rob Zombie movie.
I couldn't detach from that. I couldn't detach from it. I mean, when the kid, the gluttonous kid, I'm calling him as far as victims go. The kid who, Mr. Wilkins, you know, like he's got him in the grave, and he's like, the kid comes back to life or whatever. Like he thinks he's dead, but he's not, and so he just starts pounding him with the shovel, and I was really disturbed by that. And it's played for laughs, like, oh,
yes.
It's funny that I'm talking to the neighbor, and it's funny that I'm talking to my kid, and all the while I'm killing this kid. But I was just so horrified that I was like, this is not funny. I mean, it really, really bothered me a lot.
But that didn't bother me, honestly, because of the way it's played, and also because I think what Tony said is right. The sort of these are like Grand Guignol melodramas, like old EC Comics or any of those,
or German fairy tales. I mean, he steals candies and smashes pumpkins.
Yes, exactly.
Like they set it up that. I mean,
right.
This doesn't mean it's not horrific by any stretch, Julia.
It is right.
Definitely, I can see where you're coming from. But the way it's set up is totally different than the intent of a lot of horror movies involving like any kind of child endangerment.
Well, let me make a distinction. If you mentioned Rob Zombie, and when I was writing down my notes, that was exactly the distinction I was going to draw. Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses. The daughter who's hung up on hooks and corpses is in her 20s. She's not even a child properly, and yet I totally couldn't take that. It was too harsh and too cruel and too sad. And Zombie likes to play with emotion, so he'll even slow things down and get ironic and do stuff to trigger an emotional response. This movie doesn't do that at all. This movie is sentimental about Halloween and then is presenting a lot of horrific stuff, but strictly in that context of being sentimental about Halloween. And so that I also got to say that makes it just a gorgeous I don't even know what the word would be, inheritor of the mantle of Vault of Horror and Tales from the Crypt and Torture Garden and all those really outstanding anthologies of the 1960s. This is better than the Tales from the Crypt anthologies, I think. Not the 60s one, but I mean the Tales from the Crypt anthologies of the 1980s. This is a better movie than that.
This is. I don't know if it's better than Creepshow though.
Oh boy, Creepshow. Boy, that's a tough one.
Well, there's a really good.
I think it's better looking than Creepshow. It's way better looking than Creepshow. It has a much better.
It has certain advantages in that respect, but Creepshow is a gorgeous movie in its own right. It's got a really great color palette.
Yes.
But and George Romero is a visual artist, but he's often given much. This had a much higher budget than anything George Romero has ever had.
Creepshow is an outstanding movie. I'm glad you mentioned that, and it had, if I recall,
it had. This is the movie that this reminds me the most of.
Well, it talks about how in the art book it talks about how he wanted to do Creepshow, but then was it too dated? There's all kinds of I know that as a companion to this movie and again, what a shame that it didn't get widely released, because this should have been every horror fan should have this book, and I should have seen this movie. Yeah. Plus, I mean, Michael Dougherty drew all the original stuff, so he's got a really vested interest in making this movie awesome.
But we've seen that happen before. Do you remember when Dog Soldiers came out? And we saw Dog Soldiers, and for some reason that didn't get a theatrical release either. And that was a really well-made movie. I mean, Neil Jordan directed that, and that just happened. So, okay, some things to I didn't.
Can I say something before we get too far away from talking about the types of violence? I watched a film last night, and I have a notoriously high tolerance for twisted levels of violence.
And by the way, this is exactly one of the topics, so you're fine. We can stay on question of violence.
I watched a film last night called The Killer Inside Me, and I was horrible and disturbing to me, and I could not watch it after a while. Is
that anything like Mother May I Sleep with Danger?
It's a drama. it's a drama, but it's about this abusive police officer, and it's just the way the women are portrayed. Like, I feel like the word misogynistic is used too often in criticism of films, and it's usually used as a bludgeon. Whereas this movie was misogynistic, that the women were just there to have sex with, and then probably they were beaten to death by this character, and I just could not take it anymore, and the way the violence is portrayed. Whereas this movie, it does have that lighter touch, and it's very much in line with, like, my sense of humor. Like, I watch this movie, and I think it's just sly and hysterical. And while I do understand why somebody would be like, oh, my God, he's chopping off this kid's finger and feeding it to a dog, and think that that's disturbing. But to me, because of the way it is portrayed, it's funny. So it's
right. Well, I don't know. I think if you took out that story, I would probably like the movie more. It's just that the story. I mean, the fact that he has his child. Because for anybody who hasn't seen it but doesn't mind getting spoiled, which hopefully if you're listening to this, you don't mind getting spoiled. Right. This principal like tricks this kid into coming and sitting with him. This kid who's been going around bashing in jack-o'-lanterns and stealing people's candy and whatever. He has him come sit down with him, and it looks like he's gonna stab him with the knife, the carving knife, as they're carving the pumpkins, which I'm kind of like, why are people carving pumpkins? This is a thing I always notice in movies, that people decorate Christmas trees on Christmas, and they carve pumpkins on Halloween. I'm like, who does that? But anyway, so they're supposedly going to carve this pumpkin, and it looks like he's going to cut this kid up, but instead he poisons his candy. It's like, you should always check the candy. And so then you think when he's burying the kid that his own child has no idea what's going on, but in reality, this is like some kind of tradition that they have every year where they apparently kill some kid, chop off his head, and then carve the head of the kid with his own child who's like 7. So I'm just like, to me, that was so disturbing that I just couldn't find any humor in it. I mean, I was just like, this is horrifying and disgusting. And if you took that story out, I think I would like the movie a lot more. There was that victimization of the children.
It is that story that probably got this movie locked out of a theatrical release, because violence towards kids is still a big sort of taboo in the movies. But I got to say honestly that the school bus story is more disturbing to me.
Yeah, that's horrible too.
Than this because this is so incredibly comic. It's so much like a French puppet show, with all these crazy things going on, and yeah. What's that?
It's very, to me, like, obviously it has the EC comics kind of vibe, but it's also very shades of either like the Addams Family or something Tim Burton might do. Like, it reminded me, a lot. I again, maybe this says something more about me, but I had a terrific smirk on my face throughout that entire sequence.
Sure. Well, and I could totally associate myself with the kid. I always enjoy horror movies more when I associate myself with the victim, and a lot less when I associate myself with not the killer, but rather the person like looking for the victim. And in this case, I totally just sort of got into the craziness of the guy. The guy, he has to bury the kid, he has to like distract the neighbor, he has to do all this stuff, and it's just craziness. Whereas the one about the bus, that has almost no violence to it, but you want to talk about a taboo. The notion
it has almost no gore.
Right.
I think that's the thing. I think that's why I don't mind that one as much, because the one that's played for laughs is making light of this horrible situation, whereas the one with the bus story, which is where these parents have supposedly, parents of special needs kids have decided that they're just tired. They've bonded together and decided that they're just tired of taking care of these children who are so hard to take care of, and so they've bribed this bus driver to drive the bus off a cliff into the water, with these children chained to the bus. And to me, that is so dark that it explores, like, it's kind of a metaphor, or maybe even it's just exploring like what that would be like to have, because you really do kind of examine, you find yourself thinking, what would it be like to have a child that has these kinds of needs? Would I get tired of it? I mean, because of course you're watching it thinking, I would never be that person. I would never be someone who would get tired of my kid, taking care of it. But then you imagine, well, what is that? You can explore a lot more dimensions, I think. And so there's sort of a deeper So it's disturbing, but it's deep. Whereas the other thing is just disturbing and shallow and stupid and played to be funny, and that's what bothered me. So I think I've got more value out of the other story, even though it was more, a darker story.
And also the one with the kids.
All characters get their just desserts.
That's absolutely right.
In the end, in the confines of the story, even the principal.
Yep.
Gets the victimizer becomes not even victim; he becomes dinner.
And the victims get revenge. The children come back to life as avenging spirits. The girl whose developmental delay is extremely mild, if there's any at all. She seems to be more maybe autistic or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, she skirts. She manages to slide through the whole thing without any particular problem. And and Anna Paquin, who we think is being picked on by a bunch of people and attacked by the vampire, turns out,
the vampire turns out to be the principal again.
The vampire turns out to be the principal, which
he's not even really a vampire.
You're right. He's not even really a vampire, though we did see him kill somebody else. So this guy's really busy because he's killing kids in his backyard. He's carving up their heads with his son, and I guess
he's having sex with random strangers and then killing them. Because that's the thing is he does.
Yes. He's also stalking people in the street, and then he gets killed. So let's put this together. That means that his story that needs to be the last storyline chronologically in the evening, because he's around to see the pumpkin kid Sam attack Brian Cox in his house.
Right.
So that means the Brian Cox story, which ends out the movie, has to happen earlier.
Well, before the coven of vampire werewolf women.
Well, it could happen concurrently as well, because he actually leaves. Like the Brian Cox part the bus driver part takes place over a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what you see is
he comes back.
You
think he's dead, and then it cuts, and then
That's true. That's a good.
Yeah.
point.
What you see is you see him, Dylan Baker, I think is his name, right? The principal, Mr. Wilkins. You see him walking back into his house, and then he looks over, and the neighbor calls out to him, and he's like, screw you. Although he probably didn't use that language. And then he turns around and goes into his house, and right then the little scarecrow creature attacks Brian Cox. And then you're right, Tony, that scene goes on for another probably 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I guess. And so at that point, maybe the
principal still has to really book it, because he has to carve up the head.
He has to get dressed, and he has
to get the kid to
bed. He does say he has a date downtown.
Right.
Halloween is his night. Let me tell you. He probably cancels the Halloween, the school Halloween party. So he's like, screw that. Halloween is
gonna murder
for me.
People and get eaten by a werewolf. How it goes.
Because he gets the impression that this is the MO for many Halloweens.
Well, and who's going to take care of his kid now that he's been eaten by werewolves?
That kid will do just fine.
Yeah, he knows how to. He's sure to take up Dad's mantle.
Yeah.
Or maybe he'll just hang out with Sam, and they'll be buddies.
Yeah.
Sam? Who's Sam?
Sam.
Which one? The little scarecrow guy. Yeah.
Maybe they'll become fast friends and.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good point. Together.
Well, okay, so let's talk about Sam for a second. So, Sam.
How do you know his name is Sam? When did they say that?
It's just in all the material.
And then again, I have the book.
Right.
But what did you say? What was the first part you said?
It's a play on words. It's like Selwyn, which is spelled Sam Hain.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's ever actually said in the movie. I don't remember.
Okay.
May have said it, but anyway, yeah, his name is Sam.
Okay.
So
and he's made of pumpkin, and he's got a scarecrow head.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's got a burlap sack covering his pumpkin.
Right.
So think about this for a second. So yes, Halloween traditionally we talk about how it's based on the festival of Samhain and all that stuff, but really Halloween as we know it is an American tradition. It's all made up. It's all new. It's a hodgepodge of a whole bunch of adaptations of things to create something really wonderful that doesn't even come around really until the 40s and 50s. So that when Charles Schulz is writing about trick-or-treating in The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, it's even novel to Charles Schulz, so that he would not have been trick-or-treating as a kid himself. Ozzie and Harriet dealt with trick-or-treating in the 50s. That was the first time trick-or-treating had ever been referenced on a popular program. So this is all new stuff.
Though, in Meet Me in St. Louis, where they go
That's
out
right.
and do haunted crazy crap.
Right, right. And there's actually a really great book by David Scow called Death Makes a Holiday, which is all about yeah. Anyway, having said all that, and by the way, I feel really self-conscious lecturing about Halloween with Halloween Man here. But all of this is to say, the concept of this guy Sam being the embodiment of Halloween is awesome to me, because really all of this is so new that they've reached into Halloween and created what is, I think, the perfect Halloween icon. He is great. He's a kid. He's in pajamas. He's got a mask. He's got pumpkin guts in him. I mean, he's a trick-or-treater. He's got a trick-or-treat bag. He's got a lollipop. I mean, this kid is tailor-made to be an icon for Halloween. I mean, it just breaks my heart that people don't know more about this movie. Because,
by the way, it says you can watch the original short that Brian Doherty made.
Yes.
I mean, not Brian Doherty.
And I have not seen it. I have not seen that short.
Sorry, MikeDoherty.com.
I think it may
up. I haven't been back there, so. But
I haven't checked it out, but that's also on YouTube. You can, I know you can catch it on YouTube as well.
Yeah, I guess it was.
But yeah, he created this character. I don't know if he was full of pumpkin guts at the time, but he created this character years before, I guess, at art school or whatever.
96.
Yeah.
And got his friends to help him, color and animate it, evidently.
Drew, is there anything you would append to my little lecture about the recentness and malleability of Halloween?
Well, you pretty much nailed it. It's a little bit earlier back than the 40s and 50s, but I mean you're pretty spot on, and it is very much a hot. It's not just Samhain. I mean, there's aspects of the Day of the Dead. There's aspects of certain Catholic traditions in there. There's aspects of certain African traditions in Halloween. It is the quintessential American holiday, though, because everything about America, it's all the cultures that settled here, and they sort of interbred to create Halloween.
Yes.
And I love that about it. It was, it's funny. Everybody always tries to sort of Eurosize the concept of Halloween when it is really, again, the quintessential American holiday.
Yeah, they want to talk about how it's Irish and all this stuff, but I mean, there are elements, but that's because there were Irish people in America. I'm just very proud of the Americanness of Halloween.
By the way, it says the first print reference was in 1934 on November 1st.
I'll be darned.
Portland, Oregon Journal.
For what? For trick-or-treating?
For trick-or-treating, the first print reference in the U.S., which, again, holy crap. Horror movie fans, buy this freaking trick-or-treat book. If you get it, you will love it. However you need to get it.
I could be wrong about this, but I know the carving of pumpkins was created in the Old South. They didn't. There was when they did things like that over in Ireland proper, they used different kinds of.
I remember that as well. That they used gourds of some kind or another, but not pumpkins. It may very well be that they didn't have pumpkins. It may be that pumpkins are a New World thing.
I would think so.
Yeah. The other thing that strikes me is, I mean, you can't get away from the fact that our understanding of Halloween in the United States is colored like the East Coast. It's colored like the East Coast in October specifically. It's orange and black. It's decay, but it's not like Texas. I mean, that's not really necessarily what Texas falls look like. It's what the fall looks like in wherever the heck this movie takes place, which I have no idea.
It says Warren Valley, Ohio.
Really?
Warren Valley, Ohio was the name. Mm-hmm.
So it's a southern movie too.
Ohio's not southern. Ohio's Midwest.
I tend to think of Ohio as the South.
No, it's the Midwest.
You would think of. anything across the street from Tennessee is the South. Wouldn't you think? No?
No, it's the Midwest.
I think it depends on whose side they were on in the war, but that's a history debate, I guess. That's not a horror movie debate.
Okay. Yes.
They even have Midwest University, Midwest College, Midwest baseball are all in Ohio. Midwest football, Midwestern football is in Ohio.
I think she wins.
No, that wins. Yeah, that's it. Any place where they have the Midwestern University. You're right. You're right. It just seems so strange.
I had a thought about something we mentioned earlier, which was the timing. Like you were talking about timing, and I realized that yes, the part with Sam takes place when the principal's still next door, but then when the zombie kids show up at his door at the very end, that's hours later because he's already been all bandaged up. So he's like made a trip to the emergency room or something has happened because
right,
he's
right.
all.
That's what I'm saying. Like he.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's true.
He survived. So although the final sequence is actually the first sequence, right?
The final.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
Right. When he kills with a woman, which also is just awful. But that's that's why I called it a slasher film because when Sam kills that woman, and oh god, that scene is just horrific.
Oh, it's brilliant, isn't it? That is such a brilliant scene because it keeps.
I like that. I think this would the same exact conversation would happen in my household as well, where you have one side of the couple. Oh, this is terrible. And then the other is, but it's brilliant.
Well, I mean, the thing of it is, they keep psyching you out. I don't even remember the details, but there are numerous times through that whole scene where you expect, like one, for instance, which is just a quote from a million horror movies. She looks across the street and somebody has stopped to stare at her. And it's this beautiful quote from John Carpenter, and then that turns out to be nothing. The guy is just standing there staring at his face.
Waiting for a ride.
His car shows up and he hops in, and then there's like 2 or 3 other things, and it just keeps playing with you like that. Like,
well, let me tell you what my thing about her though is she is. I mean, because this is my lesson from that one, which is don't be a bitch because she's just so mean. Like the guy's like, oh, let's do this, and she's like, that was great, that was really great, thanks for that, and she's all sarcastic, and then she blows out the jack-o'-lantern and doesn't want to do, and he's like, and then she finally like, let's go have sex. She's like, okay, fine, and then she's gonna do other stuff downstairs, and so the guy goes up and starts watching porn, and then like the little Sam guy, I guess, unplugs the house, which I was like, what? Because he like pulls the plug, all these lights go out, but then it doesn't affect the porn. So I was like, what is this plug that unplugs like most of the house except for the porn room?
Sam is magic, or maybe
and
they
then,
have.
I guess.
I thought it was. I don't know. I guess I thought it was just the outside, but.
Maybe he keeps his porn on an uninterrupted power supply. Just.
Well, she's obviously okay with it. I mean, she may.
That's what I'm saying. It's like everything about her is like she's a total bitch, except for that she's willing to like go along with this part of it. So it's like that's her only saving grace according to this particular story.
It's not a saving grace according to this.
Like disregard again. It goes back to the whole. One of the underlying things, like EC Comics and everything, is it's all about the rules. Especially the rules of Halloween, which is one of the, it's a trope of Halloween movies, but also one I will watch over and over again is, she blows out the candle. She's like, hey, don't do that. Oh, no, I'm going to do that. And so, from that moment, that's just bad.
Yeah, anybody who breaks taboos is punished. Just like I was just watching, like I said, I mentioned I watched Vault of Horror, and they always make sure that the person who's going to wind up the victim deserves it. I mean, he does some bad stuff. He's in this case.
But not the women. The women never deserve it. They're just sluts or they're mean.
That is not.
She deserves it in the sense of the context of the rules of Halloween.
The breaking of the taboo. Yeah.
Right. She breaks the taboos, but this is not a slasher flick where people get killed for having sex. This is a movie where people get killed for cosmic reasons that have to do with defying the gods that rule Halloween. And that's exactly how Tales from the Crypt and all those other movies worked, where
Brothers Grimm fairy tales. We'll go back to that.
Absolutely.
Germany especially, like, you don't cut your nails, here's a guy who has giant scissors and cuts your hands off.
Right.
So, hey, kids, cut your nails. And that's, that's a story told to little children. By the way, there's a guy with giant scissors and he cuts your hands off, which is just horrific. You know, that's child endangerment and terribleness. And this is told to, like, kids before bed, you know.
Oh, wonderful.
This guy comes by, he'll do it. Oh, my gosh, I better cut my nails, you know.
Yep.
Don't you wish you'd had that education?
You also go blind, you know, if you masturbate too much. So there's that.
There is that.
There's also hair in the middle of the palms, interestingly enough. I never understood the source of that story. I never understood, like, why.
I thought that is if you were a vampire, I guess.
Don't you know that
that's true.
like if a kid develops the werewolf disease or like it's little guilty stories that when he first starts, if he develops it somehow as a kid, he's just thinking like, oh my gosh, it's true.
It's true.
It's traumatic.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there was the story. So then there's a story we talked about. There's a story with the girls, the fairy tale girls, who turn out to be what are they? Are they werewolves or vampires? I don't understand what they are. They start out as vampires, but then they turn into werewolves. Huh?
They're most definitely werewolves.
Well, but how come they seem like vampires at first? Like I've never understood that.
How do they seem like I don't understand it. How do they seem like vampires?
Yeah,
well, whenever they first are like messing around with them, they just have the teeth, and they look very vampire-y with the teeth, and then they start to turn into werewolves.
Mid. I guess that's like the early part of the transformation.
That's right.
I guess so.
They even
but man, that's a creepy scene too, with the skinning and everything. Ugh.
I thought that was a great transformation.
But it was such a neat story. That was a neat story.
What's that, Drew?
Huh?
Go ahead.
So this is one of the best werewolf transformations I've seen in quite a while. I'm not such a big fan of the end result. Like, it was a well accomplished creature effect, but I tend to prefer a more humanoid werewolf design.
I agree.
But the way the whole story, and I would like Julia, I would say that's my favorite, probably my favorite story in the entire bunch.
Because I like the psych out. I like the psych out that you have this dainty little girl that's Anna Paquin or whatever in her little Red Riding Hood outfit, and she's gonna get stalked, and I mean and they're all kind of trying to pick up guys and they have this part, and it's just so like it's such a psych out, with the damsels in distress, and then they turn out to be the horrible, and it's a really interesting scene. I mean, they turn out to be the big bad wolf, exactly. She turns out to be the big bad wolf. And I just kind of thought it was like I like that story, the idea of that one being don't judge a book by its cover, because it's like these fairy tale girls, and then they turn out not to be.
Yeah.
By the way, also, I wish to say that please, a moratorium on Marilyn Manson's version of Sweet Dreams. I like that song. I wish that was one. I think Jason started a thread sometime on Facebook about songs you never want to hear. That's reaching bad to the bone.
I do not like that song. I hate that cover of it. I hate it. I love Annie Lennox.
It's not the best Marilyn Manson's. There are decent Marilyn Manson.
I'm not a fan, I will say, but I like the way it was used here because, like, for one, like, within the concept of this Halloween universe, those girls represent like a certain type of. Anytime you see a large Halloween gathering, you see these college-age girls, and they're dressed provocatively like that, and that's the sort of music a girl like that would listen to.
But granted,
I love the way you describe that.
Granted,
college girls dressed provocatively. That's Halloween.
When this movie was gonna come out, there weren't 50 movies that had that in it, or in their trailer, or in any media that used that. Yeah, and I actually like the song, but oh man, it's time to stop it.
I agree. There's got to be something else.
If you ever listen to this, like, it's a great song. We can listen to it on our iPods or on CDs.
Well, I mean, there are other tunes. You could. There was a million. You could use "Blood, Milk, and Sky" by Rob Zombie. You could use. I don't know. You could once again haul out the Sundays with Wild Horses.
By the way, also there is some awesome editing tricks that, upon rewatching, I was like, oh, that's cool. For example, you see the werewolf women ripping their skin off and all that. And
Yeah.
one that's like a zipper, and that was really cool and awesome. But later on, the guy with his dog who has the crazy costume on the dog, he rips it off in a really similar manner. It's meant to kind of like evoke that same thing, and also the kind of wolf in sheep's clothing, or you know,
that's a good
provocative women's clothing thing, and it's really kind of has that same feel. And I was watching it again, I was like, oh, hey, there's tons of little cool pieces like that I think it's just an underrated movie.
It is.
Even the way they turn into werewolves is very evocative of a woman taking off her, like a striptease.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's so cleverly done within the context of this story that is used, like they've sought this guy out to devour him, but it's used as almost like they keep using the language as like this sexual.
Yes. Right. Yes, it's a burlesque. They unroll the skin of their legs to reveal wolf legs underneath, the way that you might unroll a garter.
Stocking, yeah.
Stocking, yeah. It's amazing.
I wanted to say something about the provocatively dressed college girls. There's this great line in Sex and the City. I think it's Sex and the City 2. I don't know. Anyway, the movie, and where Miranda's looking at these costumes, and she goes, witch and sexy kitten, and she's like, those are the only two choices for women, or witch and sexy kitten. And Carrie's like, you said a mouthful there, sister. And it's like just how like women are basically defined in culture.
Now, granted, if you look online, you can now be sexy Ninja Turtle or sexy Elmo.
I do think it's weird. Yeah,
Bigfoot, or one of the creepiest, sexy Annie, which is creepy on many levels.
Yes.
Of like, whoa. There was I think it was College Humor, one of those had like sexy Abe Lincoln.
There is something
which made me wish that there was a whole, like, look, it's sexy Thomas Jefferson and sexy Taft.
Sexy Edgar Allan Poe.
Roosevelt.
I would love to see a sexy Edgar Allan Poe, actually. That's
sexy Roosevelt.
Sexy Steve Buscemi. Sexy Steve Buscemi, or whatever how he pronounced his name. Buscemi.
But I was just hoping for more founding fathers / presidents,
right?
Like people, And in Texas, you can get sexy Sam Houston. Just,
There's a sexy Robin Hood. I pulled them up just to see what else there was, and I pulled up costumes for women. I've got a sexy Robin Hood. I've got lots of. I've got a baseball player.
One of the better. Oh no. You should. The creep factor is definitely in the sexy Muppet ones.
Taxi driver.
Not even Miss Piggy. I'm like sexy Elmo, sexy Cookie Monster. It's just kind of unsettling.
I was just thinking about how you're right that Annie is disturbing because, you're talking, if she's sexy Annie, she's a grown-up, exploited, unwanted.
No, but there's that whole schoolgirl. There's the whole Britney Spears thing with the sexy schoolgirl. That's always been
schoolgirl, and there's Annie, which is much younger than even that schoolgirl. I don't know, whatever. It's off topic, but that one I think ups the creep factor this year in a growing collection. And I'm not even prudish about. Look, Halloween is awesome. Go downtown. It's definitely a sight as a.
I'm not finding it, Tony. I'm not finding a sexy Annie. I'm only finding.
Perhaps
there she is. I found her. There's sexy Annie. Yeah, she's kind of a Betty Boop-ish kind of Annie.
Either way, it's creepy.
I just wrote a scene 2 nights ago where a woman in a Betty Boop costume gets infected with a sort of a zombie vampire virus, and so Betty Boop is running around Grauman's Chinese Theater biting people. And it's
there is a Betty Boop costume.
It's the weirdest thing.
Everybody always says Jamie looks like Betty Boop, so I'm gonna have to pass that on to her. So there's a vampire Betty Boop running around fighting people.
All right, but let's get back on the movie here.
Well, it is the movie, but yeah.
No, Sexy Annie is definitely not the movie.
This is true. So okay, the stories are, and I'll throw them out for like people to pick anything that they want to discuss. Because we're going to have to get to the wrap up in a second. What else have we not touched on? Because there's the opening with the couple.
The end. We hadn't touched on the end, I don't think.
Well, the end is, what's the end? The end is the sequence with Sam. It's called Meet Sam, where
No.
Sam
That's not the end. I'm talking about the very end, where the zombie children of the bus, the kids who got killed on the bus,
Yes.
have come back, have been freed, basically, I guess, by the other idiot kids that went down there. And so they've come up, or maybe they were just freed by the magic of Halloween. No, they were freed by the. Yeah, I don't know how they got out, but anyway.
I think they're just ghosts, and they've come to avenge,
right.
And Sam has brought them.
Well, they're avenging undead in the tradition of EC Comics.
Absolutely.
They
like
show up at Brian...
Ted Danson and Creep Show, they are going to get back at.
Well, they
even
show
though
up at Brian
really
Cox's door, but here's the thing I'm wondering is, up until the point when Sam shows up, Brian Cox has been very good about locking his door like 15 times, and then for whatever reason on Halloween night he decides to drop his guard a little bit and leaves the door wide open, and then later on just open it to people, and they're like, why? What is this whole pretense of having like 15 locks if you're just going to open the door for people?
Well, here's what's cool about the Brian Cox thing, though. Sam teaches. We think he's done. We think that that's the gag, actually, because Sam teaches Brian Cox a lesson. He's a jackass who doesn't give away candy. He's a mean guy who sets his dogs on trick-or-treaters. And so after he gets the shit beat out of him by Sam, Brian Cox has learned his lesson and he starts giving away candy. And then...
And what happens? Zombie kids come and get him. And why did they come and get him? Because it turns out, he's the bus driver.
He's the bus driver. Although, if you recall, it wasn't even his fault. He actually stopped and went back, and it was, the Dracula kid who actually ended up driving the bus over. Now, I would say...
No, he was going to kill him. He was just going to give him candy first.
He wasn't cold feet. She's right.
Go through with it. He was probably going to do it,
and the kid goes, I want to go home.
He went back to test the chains, right? The kid went back to I guess, to drive, maybe to get away. Who knows?
Yeah, he was trying to go home. He said, I want to go home, and so he was trying to turn the bus around.
Right. So at the very least, he attempted to commit murder and then was interrupted, and then the murder was completed. So it's murder. Yeah. But I'm just saying that it's not quite the same as...
No, it's the same.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
But anyway, so we figure out that it's him because we said there's some kind of picture burning in the fireplace. So I'm like, why does he even have that picture? You see that he would have burned that picture a long time ago. But it has him with those kids, like it's the bus driver, and this is where they're finally going to get their revenge. And I'm kind of wondering why they haven't gotten it before now. Maybe it's like some kind of special anniversary. I don't know.
Well, it is possible that he pulls these things out, and maybe this is a turning point, because it's a turning point for the Avenging Spirits too. They haven't killed him yet. Now they kill him. Why is that?
Well, something freed them. It's like I said, I don't know if it's a special anniversary of some kind, or if it's those kids going and visiting where they died. But something freed them.
Well, that's possible, but I don't know. I don't think we need to have something special freeing them. I think they just choose this moment to come back. But did they say anything like it was 20 years ago today or anything like that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, they do. They say 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's it. It's the 30-year anniversary. I don't know what the significance of 30 years is, but there you go. It's time. It's time to come pay the piper. And yeah, they've got all their grody, masks and we leave
or whatever
on the screaming, Brian Cox. So and that's the end of the film. Brian Cox is just fantastic. This is a great cast. This is really great. I don't know everybody in there, but the ones that I know are wonderful, and even the ones that I've never seen before are all fantastic. But Brian Cox is unrecognizable. I love that actor a lot, and yet I completely did not recognize him. There was, I know him from Manhunter and, from, what was he was in one of the X-Men movies, and, this is just, he's under so much hair and that beard and all that crap that you just simply don't recognize him at all. Amazing character.
Great.
Well, I'll tell you what we should do, actually, because we're getting late, is we need to go around final thoughts and also endorsements. So let's go backwards from where we started. Julia, final thoughts and endorsements, if you have any endorsements for this period in the middle of October, or just in general. Final thoughts on Trick or Treat.
I mean, I feel like there was a couple of things that were good about it. It's if I would try to focus on the positive as far as like it being a good film, but I really just don't want to watch movies like this. If I can avoid it. So if we can like avoid having me watch them, you know, maybe somebody else can be a guest star on the week that we're going to do stuff like this, because I just don't enjoy them. But I did, like I said, I did find some value. As far as endorsements, I mean, I'd have to go traditional Halloween. Like as far as if we're going to watch really freaking scary movies, it's the first Halloween movie is probably my favorite one, because there's just that one scene.
That is definitely a slasher movie.
Yeah, it is a slasher movie, but it's like the only slasher movie that I've watched that I didn't regret watching, because it's such a classic, you know what I mean? Like, it's like you kind of have to see that to know what anybody's ever talking about when they talk about anything else.
There's also zero gore in that movie. None. Right. There is no blood in Halloween, to my recollection. I don't...
It's just creepy.
There's a little bit, but it's not like what people think it is. It's kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre in that respect.
Right. Yeah, and I didn't like that movie either. No, but I like Halloween. I think it's a great. It's really, 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 really scary, and it's just so brilliant. So.
You mentioned Chainsaw, and it's so funny to think that this movie that we just treated is so totally in a different tradition from Chainsaw. You know, if you want to try to like explain things to people, you know, Chainsaw is in one tradition, Halloween's in another tradition, and Trick or Treat is in yet another tradition, and they're just like. You can like totally enjoy one column of horror movies and have zero interest in another. Like, I think Chainsaw will just bum you out. I love Chainsaw. I think it's a great movie, but it will really, really knock you out. This is not that kind of movie for me. Anyway, I'm sorry.
This is fun. This is
our faithful fan Darren over here is suggesting that we read the October 1 week challenge. Gothic Misunderstood Ghosts over at Simply Scripts, so that's what he recommends.
Ooh, okay, outstanding. Okay, final thought. Oh, yeah, did you have any endorsements, Julia?
I did. I endorsed my Halloween. That was my endorsement.
Oh, okay, very good. All right. Okay. I thought you were just talking about Halloween.
No.
I apologize. Okay. So, Monsieur Drew, what are your final thoughts and endorsements?
How could I not endorse? How could I not like this movie? I mean, come on. It's a good flick.
You're the creator of Halloween, man. How could you? Right?
Yeah, exactly. Come on. I mean, this is a shoe-in.
For those who have not seen Halloween Man, you have to go to HalloweenMan.com. It is an ongoing webcomic about a superhero who is essentially a raised wraith who is the embodiment of the spirit of Halloween. He died and rose as the spirit of Halloween, and he eats monsters to keep regular. It is amazing. It is just amazing, and so do continue.
Thank you. Thank you. As far as my endorsement for this week, I am endorsing a book that was given to me on my birthday. It is called The Hammer Story, The Authorized History of Hammer Films, by Marcus Hearn. Alan Barnes. Yep. And it's a coffee table book, so I know that would turn off some people, assuming that it has no real critical weight to it. But it's actually very interesting. It has little synopsises / reviews of almost every Hammer horror film ever. And we're not just talking like the Frankenstein and the Draculas. I mean, they have all the dinosaur movies. You know, they even have like some of their spoof, their thrillers. It's got this great cover of Christopher Lee doing the Uncle Sam view in full Dracula regalia. It's one of the best Christopher Lee Dracula pictures I've ever seen.
That is a great. I'm looking at it now. That is an outstanding picture. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it should be the recruiting picture for the Romanian army, actually. But the Uncle Vlad wants you. But it's what a wonderful wonderful gift it was, and I've been thoroughly enjoying reading it over. And I've probably read it maybe 10 or 20 times since receiving it on my birthday, but I just love it. So that's my endorsement, except for what Jason just said, is the HalloweenMan.com. The Chapter 4 of Halloween Man versus the Invisible Man is now up on the site, and you can read the thrilling conclusion, who lives, who dies, what's left of them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Outstanding. Tony, final thoughts and endorsements?
I really dig the movie. I love all of the tropes that are in it and the way it plays with them. I like that. I mean, being an artist as well, it's nice when the original artist gets to direct, and I think you can see that it was definitely a labor of love. I think it's terrible that the studios did what they did and almost buried this movie. It's ridiculous. And I definitely endorse the book, as I said throughout the thing. It's just cool. I'd forgotten how much cool stuff was in here. It's just awesome. We actually on desertsofmars.com on our YouTube site, which there's links there to the YouTube. We actually have put up a new song. The sound quality is not super great, but it's fan stuff. And actually, I don't know if it's an endorsement, but I definitely, in the horror vein, saw two of the weirdest movies I've seen recently in horror. An Indian horror movie called Hiss, with I think 3 S's. Very strange movie. Very strange. And another movie called Sick Nurses, which is a Thailand ghost story slash really an excuse to get Thai women in nurse outfits that are more Halloween and less anything you would actually wear in a hospital. Anyone would be mistaken.
Sexy nurse. Would that be sexy nurse?
Yeah, different sexy nurses, the costumes, and it's kind of has a lot of, gore, and then weird, Asian horror tropes in it. It's just a strange movie, not for the faint of heart, by the way. It's pretty gory, and even some parts where I was like, whoa, that's pretty sick. But just the way it's put together and how it all plays out and it's cut. If you're looking for something strange, there's definitely, they turned up on Netflix, and there's a whole huge chunk of, Korean and Thai and a few, Chinese movies that have come up, Taiwanese, I think, that have come up on Netflix for some reason, and I'm just kind of thumbing through a bunch of them, but those are the two. One from, of course, Hiss is from India. It just randomly showed up, and then Sick Nurses, it is bizarre. So,
very
I don't
cool.
know. There's more crazy horror on Netflix than I had imagined, so.
No, there's I just never get tired of just wandering through Netflix because there's always so much going on. All right. Well, I guess that leaves me. So I won't add much to all of that other than to say that this movie is a wonderful celebration of Halloween. This is a great movie to watch with friends. I mean, this would be an outstanding movie for some pizza and popcorn and the kind of movie experiences that I don't really experience a lot lately, where you have a bunch of idiots sitting around shouting at the screen. It is a beautiful celebration of Halloween. The colors are perfect. It feels like fall. I just absolutely approve.
Oh, and by the way, it does segue into our next week with the kid talking about how Charlie Brown's an asshole.
That was really
fun. Which is awesome.
So I have not yet seen Trick or Treat, but that's going to be next. So we'll figure that out, and we're also going to talk about Charlie Brown Halloween.
Great Pumpkin. You got to call it the right thing. It's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown.
It's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown, which is very likely going to be a separate, 2 episodes that'll go up on the same day.
Well, you better be sure you call it the right thing, or Sam might come after you, Jay.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly. Don't be blowing out any jack-o'-lanterns.
That's precisely. Right. And my only endorsement is I also have a coffee table book that I totally must endorse because it's still pretty new. It's also by Marcus Hearn, and it's called The Art of Hammer, and it is nothing but Hammer movie posters.
Ooh,
it is
awesome. Oh man.
It is amazing. I mean, and it's got a groovy painting of Christopher Lee on the cover and writhing hippie chicks, and it is where it's at. Posters from the archive of Hammer films, going all the way from the 50s through the end of the era. So that's 2 Hammer coffee table books by Marcus Hearn that have been endorsed today. So, wow.
You can tell where our taste.
Yeah. It certainly doesn't run to a lot of reading.
Castle Dracula podcast, though.
That's right. And I keep thinking, I go, maybe we're limiting ourselves. Maybe we should keep the name Castle Dracula, but call it, like, shorten it to the CD podcast or something like that.
No.
So
No.
I'm afraid we're the Castle Dracula podcast, live or die. That's what we're doing.
CD would sound like we're talking about CDs.
Right, which wouldn't make any sense.
Our time down here.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, with that, Joya is going to close us out. So, Joya, after I say goodbye, you can hit the little red stop sign. And and thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you being on and your patience. And if anybody has any questions after they hear this, do like us on iTunes, and do come to our Facebook page and leave questions and comments. We always love to get them. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Good night.